if you want to share, we love it. We like these stories.
I mean, at the end of the day, as much as you care about the player experience, you still have to make money. So there's this balance, and that's where that's where we were kind of talking about at the beginning. Like,
Yeah.
I love building games. I love sitting on an airplane and seeing someone play Yahtzee. But at the same time, I got to build a business. And so I love giving reps, as you can see. For the folks listening, you got to not just
This is no bullshit gaming podcast, 2.5 gamers. Sharing actionable insights, dropping knowledge from our day-to-day user acquisition, game design, and ad monetization jobs. We are definitely not discussing the latest industry news, but having so much fun. Let's not forget this is a 4 a.m. conference discussion vibe, so let's not take it too seriously.
Oh, it's great. All right. Hello, everybody. This is a special episode. I think this is like a 10th special episode in a row.
No, it's very special for two reasons, because we have a lovely guest, but also look at what Remo, Jakub, our resident game designer, has managed to do.
Fuck me, yes.
He, after 2.5 years of having a podcast, has finally gotten a boom arm.
All right. I didn't notice that, because your volume is quite low. So please speak up.
It's pretty magnificent. I think it's like covering half his face too.
Yeah, for those who want to see the cover story, join our Slack. I will post it there because I have fucking 20 centimeters thick table, so I need to weld the thing to it. I'll show you.
Oh my god. Okay, but
Remo's just lucky to be based in a place where people actually still know how to weld.
Yeah, well, that's
I don't
true.
know how to weld.
By the way, I'm not sure if you see it, but I also have a quite special T-shirt.
Is that our new T-shirt?
It's our new T-shirt, yes.
That looks so good.
It's our new T-shirt, and there is a unicorn in the pocket. Yes, that's true.
Sorry, Eric, I stole your thunder.
Yeah, I know.
Our very special guest.
Our very special guest, yeah.
I feel like that's my payment for being on here. Get a free T-shirt with the weird unicorn.
Oh, that's true, actually. Yeah, if you send me your size, then I can bring it to you.
Done.
Oh well, you know what? You should just introduce yourself, Eric.
That's probably the best way.
Yeah, that's probably the best, because we have an OG in gaming industry joining our podcast, Eric.
Yeah, I'm too modest. Peter
come
was
on.
like a mini clip when he was interviewing me at the Pocket Gamer, kept like blowing smoke up my ass. I was like, oh, this is so uncomfortable.
Blows them out now.
I'm definitely mobile OG, which makes me feel really old. Been in mobile since 2011. So founded Scopely. My role at Scopely was basically everything. So I built the entire publishing business. I was the first product manager on Dice with Buddies, which became Topsy, which then became Monopoly Go. That same team hired basically all the folks that are running the company today, which is kind of cool. I think some of the topics you guys want to talk about, like potentially, like metrics, IP, did all of it.
Yeah.
Like their live ops engine,
Nice.
everything. Also helped build Max, which became part of AppLovin. That was me and Jim Payne and a few folks sitting together and like seeing what all the bad shit that was going with ad tech. Deciding to lots of good stories there. I didn't want to run it, and then I started Embrace, which is basically a tool set that helps engineers manage the complexity of mobile, like ANRs. Felix was mentioning that to me. All the shit that goes wrong or needs optimization in an app that engineers and PMs can't really solve on their own. So I built a product for it, and it's been going well.
When do you sleep? When do you sleep?
I don't know. I have even more ideas going. I try to sleep, but it doesn't work very well. But
do we start with Max, Scopely? Where do we go with this?
I don't know where to start. Let's start with Max. Yeah, that's
I was just waiting when the fireworks would pop out of the screen.
I know, man. Like, I can't believe I started by talking about your boom arm. That's so unimportant.
Yeah. It's like this is way better intro than a boomer. But I think we could start with Max. I mean, it's not my wheelhouse, but still, it's super interesting. When you brought it up when we met at PGC, I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah. Before Scopely, I was actually an ad tech guy. Like I built a couple ad tech companies. One of them got acquired. And so at Scopely, part of the reason they have an ad tech business, like it's not typical for games. Most game developers, we all hate ads for different reasons.
Well, thank you very much for listening.
Hate is a strong word.
I'll take that back. We don't love most game developers don't love putting them in, and we don't necessarily love the ad tech companies that are out there.
But we love the money.
The money's nice.
Yeah.
And so, like, adding into a game, obviously, you've got to do, especially casual and hyper casual. So for Max, it was Mopub was already part of Twitter. A bunch of companies, including Scopely and Zynga and others, were thinking about building ad tech solutions. There was just a gaping hole. And to be blunt, and I'm friends with all these guys like the AppLovins and the Iron Sources and the tons of other ad tech companies that have all kind of consolidated. We're never really working for the game devs. They're all about the money, and I don't blame them. So we built Max partially to say fuck you to all those companies and see if we can help the game devs. And then partially to see if we could buy Mopub back. Because Mopub was a really good product, which they end up doing. If you like AppLovin, they acquired Max and then they acquired Mopub right back into it, which is so the plan actually came to fruition, just kind of in a different format.
So you broke the wheel and then rebuilt it.
Exactly. So it was a fun problem. Dan ended up running it because I just didn't have another ad tech company.
Well, you have to see if to sleep, right? So at least, I mean, like, how do you even like come up with these types of ideas? Like you mentioned also like Embrace at the same time with Max, and like, where is it coming from?
I think you guys probably have tons of ideas too. It's mostly about jumping on them. Like when you're in the depths of stuff like user acquisition and ad tech and live ops for a game, and just there's tons of ideas that come out. And even now, right, there's definitely a hole for ad tech. There's a couple companies starting to pop out. I've been hearing rumors of maybe a round 3 for Mopub, and there's the Edermax guys and like a bunch. There's definitely opportunity. There's been too much consolidation. But whenever there's a pain like ANR, there should be a solution. Or like when there's like inequity around financing, for instance, I'm just randomly ripping right now, right? There's been a bunch of VCs that have gone back into the games world because they see that there's opportunity, mostly because game devs didn't have any money to raise, and now they can get a big chunk of these companies. So it's just being in the rolling up your sleeves and seeing the opportunity. I think it's really starting companies. When founders ask me like, how do I get going? It just takes balls. Like you just gotta jump in and quit your job and do it, which is scary because you're like, oh, now I'm not making any money anymore.
Yeah, but that's like where all the fun starts, like jumping out of the comfort zone and all the magic.
I think of it like jumping in the deep end of the pool. It's cold, it sucks. You just gotta go. It's definitely the scariest moment. Once you're in it and you're running, it's fun.
So from founding Max, how much of that did you take with you then to Scopely? Because their admon team, at least I know, it's quite sophisticated compared to other companies. How much of that was just built from what you remembered from Max, or even maybe some of it was built with that technology?
Max came from Scopely. I actually wrote a business plan at Scopely to build out an ad tech, and we just didn't want to do it. We didn't have it. It wasn't as fun. And then I hired the ad tech folks, and then Tim O'Brien, who's still there, runs them. So Sen, who's awesome, runs ad tech at Scopely now. Eric Ma runs it for the UA and all those guys. So Sen's definitely been involved, but no, the stuff that he's trying to figure out is the fun of running ad tech within a large games company.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay, fair. Should we start with maybe the Scopely story? Maybe you can just give us 3 to 5 minutes on how you guys got started. The first breakout success.
We can listen to this for the whole.
Yeah, but the first breakout success. What kind of the principles? Yeah.
I don't know where you want me to start.
Start from the beginning.
The core of it.
All the stories like, oh, we just built the business from our garage and whatever else, all these like fun stuff.
Maybe a little bit. The first, once in a while, when it sold last year, we were all posting pictures. It was definitely like a closet with a big house. We would interview people, and it'd be like we're coming into a room with a couch. I don't think
casting couch. Okay, interesting.
Okay. And it was in a casting office. It was LA. So no comments.
Yes, of course.
That's a lot of stories for another day. We started at the heart because in 2010, so most of the big game companies today either had started or were web and Facebook like Canvas back then.
Yep.
Which most of the audience probably doesn't remember, so I won't get into Facebook.
Yeah, I brought a few Facebook Canvas games to mobile, which was a long time ago.
2011, that's the year of Candy Crush and Clash of Clans.
Right. Yeah. To some extent, I'd say Candy Crush switched to mobile at that point, but King started on Facebook Canvas.
Definitely.
Yeah, also.
Yeah. I mean, Zynga obviously did, and then they switched.
Yeah.
Else, but yeah, it was the year of Farmville from a money perspective. No question. I don't.
Yeah.
Did Supercell release that year? I didn't think so. Maybe
double check.
Either way, it doesn't matter. So we started on Canvas as a company that helped people connect. We felt like Facebook was really shitty at creating conversation, so we were seeing all these people chat about all these games on Facebook, on the social news feed and forums and all over the place. And they weren't able to do it in the games because the games were not, I mean, Farmville is a pretty shitty game. It was just really good at monetization and social virality. But from like a beauty and everything, it sucked. Great game. Like obviously successful. Wise, I think we'd all build Farmville. But it wasn't great for connectivity. Facebook continues to be poor at it. That's why they've tried Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp. So Scopely started there. I think fast forwarding, we did really well on Facebook Canvas. So did all these other companies. Facebook was great for grabbing users, kind of the theory of mobile, really good at cheap acquisition, pretty good monetization, really good for ad tech. I mean, Amplifier and a bunch of those came out of Facebook Canvas as well, which became the ad tech for Unity. To go really far back, and then mid 2011 is when most of the companies started shifting because Facebook killed parse, shifted their APIs, and it became really not a great place to be. Like they're a really shitty partner to developers over the years, and I don't mind saying that. They buy a company like Parse, which invested in Brace because it was a great product, and then they kill it, and what are developers supposed to do? All of a sudden you're left scrambling. So late 2011, we shifted to mobile and started with Dice with Buddies. That's the really long story, very short. There's a lot of caveats to that, but yeah.
By the way, sorry for the correction, both Candy Crush, Clash of Clans are 2012, not 11.
Yeah.
Oh,
remember because
what a difference.
Probably for you guys, I remember because I think in terms of like user acquisition moments, because at that time especially, but it's still true today, we were always trying to find ways to get users, as many as possible, cheaply, all the time. And so we were looking at like, I was always watching Clash of Clans because they were just killing at grabbing users. But I love talking like Gree and DNA and all those, which would just buy users, like all of them for a period of time. Where did they go?
It was all fraud back then, wasn't it? Like a lot of fraud, right?
Maybe
on Facebook. On Facebook, not that much.
There's a little bit of it today too.
A little bit,
yeah. Even on big UA channels like Google, for example, it's just nobody talks about it that much.
How much fraud do you think there is on Google? Would you say?
Well, on display network, quite a lot. Also, if you run mobile app install campaigns, well, the CPI campaigns, you get absolutely shitty traffic, and you are optimizing for installs, not first opens as an event, and that's just like you can see you buy 100 users and 30 of those don't even open the app. It's absolutely terrible.
And now it's hard to you can't call them out on it. There's no policing, but I think most of those are users, and they're trying to get you to pay. It's a game. Like the arbitration around first user install and open is still rampant. It's so opaque, especially iOS, because Apple doesn't help. They just make it, it's like a black box, install and then open.
Yeah, well,
but it's the same.
It is
good opportunity for company if you can figure it out.
Can you talk us through like the first success at Scopely when you guys were like, this is something different we have, and what the kind of winning formulas were to get there?
Yeah, I think we weren't that smart about it back then because we didn't understand our
That's the best story.
abilities. Dice with Buddies was definitely our first win. And then for everybody listening, like we had a bunch of games that didn't work after that. It's hard to get your second winner. Dice with Buddies, which became Yahtzee. Dice with Buddies is still out there, I think, and they're both either top 100 or top 200 games, depending on both of them, and it's the same game. We figured it out, I think, primarily because I was an ad tech monetization guy, and my co-founder, Walter, one of them, was really good at social and virality. And if you think about what games and live ops is, it's how do you get users and how do you monetize them and what are the mechanics? And so we were really good at those. We just didn't know what we were doing when it came to games. So Dice with Buddies, we kind of we bought the game. It was really small, and we blew it up like overnight in a good way. Like I sat there and we figured out the monetization and I figured out the ad.
What were the 3 things that you did that you like, you know, on the monetization side that like, shit, this killed it?
It's a good question.
More spend depth.
It's a great question.
I think I'll give you a couple. I'll give you 2.
Okay.
One, it's a theme that I think about for any game, but even for like when I help other non-games apps, there's like a core loop, and Yahtzee is super easy to think about for any game. Like it's a turn-based asynchronous game. So you take a turn, the other person gets a push notification, they take a turn, you get a push notification back. The goal then is how to make that fast as possible and as often as possible. And I think a lot of game devs lose track of the loop that's core to the game. They start building all these ancillary features that actually detract from it, and then their KPIs actually wither away. And so if you think about monetization, the best thing we did was add a bonus roll to Dice with Buddies. So from a perspective, we let you pay for a 4th roll, which definitely broke Yahtzee, the game dynamic, and we had lots of fights over it. But it worked so well because people
So it was something closer to like when Candy Crush moved the +5 booster out of the level at the end of the level when you lose.
That's a good comparison.
Some kind of that moment.
Like you have 3 rolls. You're like, I shit the bed. I'm going to lose this game. I'm going to buy a 4th. It's a really good analogy. But it works within the flow. It's not like something where you leave the flow and have to figure it out, which it's really, if you don't think about it from the beginning when you build a game, it's really hard to add these monetization flows later. The second is we added, it's not conceptually crazy, but when we kept looking at our metrics, I actually felt kind of dirty. Whereas every turn we added an ad, just normal, like text travel,
doing the Lord's work.
All of them were just things, all of them. Like the amount of ad inventory these companies create is crazy, but you're like, you play for literally 10 seconds, and then we're going to show you originally it was like a medium rectangle, a medrect, and we're like, great, this doesn't pay well, but we'll try it. It's better than nothing. And then we're like, oh, our KPIs didn't change. So then I'm like, okay, I'm going to show this after every turn instead of like once per day. And then the KPIs didn't change. And we're like, holy shit, this is crazy. Then I'm like, I'm going to show a 15-second video that's skippable, like once per day. You can see where this is going. Then I'm like, maybe I'll show a 15-second video after every turn. And then at a certain point, you're like 30-second unskippable, and people are still playing. And you're like, you're watching more videos than actually playing my game. I think we should. Then we stopped because it felt weird. But it was a good game. And then I think that's what we kind of figured out. Like, watch your metrics. Be impartial. Because I think when you, especially ad tech, I was shitting on ad tech earlier, but game devs, especially engineers, hate adding ads. But just look at the metrics. If it doesn't affect your metrics and it works within the loop, no one's leaving. As long as the
sound bite. That's the sound bite for the episode right there, Matej. Right there.
Yeah, that's great.
What was the year here? Sorry, like it seems like I don't know. It's kind of nowadays like you can search these things up, but it was like pretty revolutionary by that time, wasn't it?
At least it felt to us, because we were like, it was like in a startup, everything is heightened. We were like, if you add every day, I'd be like, I'm going to just add another video. And I was doing ad tech myself back then, like tweaking the knobs and trying to make deals. Like Adam Ferogi from AppLovin was like sitting in my office trying to pitch us and we were like one of your first customers, because we had so much inventory, and I was just trying to find videos at that point to make any money that didn't screw over didn't freeze the experience. So yeah, thanks, Jakub. I guess it was revolutionary.
What year? You remember what year was like 2015?
That was like 12 or 13.
12 right. Even.
Yeah, it was probably. It must have been. Well, I do feel old now. Probably was just getting started, and then I'm pretty sure we were first 20 customer to Mopub as well. Like,
was this on Facebook Canvas still or mobile? Facebook Canvas. Mobile, okay, mobile already.
Yeah,
okay.
End of 2011, we turned off all our Canvas apps and went straight to mobile, which King did as well. Jam City did as well. A bunch of companies did. Mini Club did it either around then. Their games kind of lingered, but we all felt the same thing. We just knew the world was over on Facebook.
It's changing,
Yeah.
Do you remember any of the performance marketing things you did? Matej needs his red meat as well.
I remember those days still.
Yeah, you're bantering about it now. It feels like it hasn't changed that much.
No, still the same shit all over again. Just well, I'm not sure about you, but we were trying to find these small right-hand side Facebook Canvas desktop placements, and you couldn't even see like what's in the image.
Then it was like, how do you the ads are defined? It's clean. It was really how do you get the click purely so that because the ad attribution was so brutal for the installs. It was way worse back then. I mean, all those companies are big companies now too. Just and Braberg and there's Has offers back then.
I remember we signed the Has offers, and then they shut down the company. I was like, yes, great, thank you.
They changed their name.
Just merged to something, Yeah,
I can't remember the name. I always get them confused. It merged and split into something else. I don't know. Matej was asking me before this I was kind of spitballing, trying to remember things. If I had to give advice, I'll give you a different answer. The part I don't think is different is when you build and launch a game and you want to really do UA, you have to think about all sources of traffic because they all affect each other. So I think game companies and definitely UA folks, they get religious on their channels. So they go, like you were saying, like Google may suck, but if it's driving installs, it may be worth it because then you're getting traffic organically from like Apple or Google, somewhere else from the store, or maybe who knows where, and they affect each other. And then the more sometimes it's better for you. Like the more installs you get in a short period of time, especially when you launch a game, definitely affects rankings. Even if it's an unset art and Google and Apple like to change their rankings, it definitely does. That's why historically incentivized has worked. It just work as an independent channel where you're trying to get quality users. But when you get incentivized and it drives organic, because you're changing the ranking or you're creating presence or people are seeing the ads. If you look at I call it eCPI, the effective CPI for that cohort of time, you can be in the money. And so back then, I mean, we were buying shit like crazy when we launched the game. I mean, I'm not going to talk about the game that you guys got talked to for, but it's definitely.
We'll get there.
When you launch a game, you go for the gusto. If you can do it, because it's better than trickling it out and then not really getting to a place where people really know your game even exists.
Yeah, can you unpack this not I don't want to say shady, but as all of the different types of traffic that you kind of need to think about when you launching game like a big scale, because I can then compare some notes from my end as well.
Yeah. When you're big scale, like
I mean, it's hard to say like what's big scale, but still like look when you've done it.
Like when I was building game, like back at Scopely, the games we launched all hit number one. And it would stay.
That's a big scale.
And your goal when you had the ability to do it was definitely hit number one. So I think I'm trying to think of where to start. There's the topic of soft launch versus hard launch.
Yeah.
It's different for UA completely. But when you hard launch, like worldwide launch it, especially US market, which is where most of the money is, what channels did we use? Depending on the time period, we definitely tried to toe the line, but your number one goal is to get featured on the launch. So the first question is, what is Apple, especially because they're more sensitive, or Google, going to do to get you featured? And then what can you do to not stop the featuring? And then depending on the time period, exactly, is there incentivized ads? I've been really chewing on Gratis. You saw my email. I was thinking about that back in the day. Which is flashback for maybe 5% of the people here, but it's pretty interesting for today's world with Apple. There's incentivized ads, offer walls, which are basically incentivized ads. I don't know, traditional UA, depending on channel. There's in-store ads, which is definitely, I won't talk too much about, but it's an ad tech company in Apple and Google. There's social. I consider for a launch the social component a channel. How do you get other people to invite other folks? Because that, even if they're not quality, the curiosity creates installs, which creates social awareness, which then creates they did it really amazingly well for Monopoly Go. Like everybody knew the game within a very short period of time, which then creates free traffic. Commercials, TV does work shockingly well. It continues to work. There was I see your face. We'll come back
Felix. I think there's one in my gym. I need to go check though.
No, for Embrace, funny thing is, at midnight, I will watch TV. They're all mobile apps, everyone. And then I'm like, every one of these is a potential customer because they all care about the app. So I'll go all into our marketing queue.
Nice.
And I've gotten a good number of customers that way because they care. They're advertising.
Yeah.
Just at midnight, you'd be like, why is this worth it? It's free. It's free. It's so cheap. And people do watch TV all the time. I don't know. I'm kind of rambling. There's tons of channels, right? Yeah.
But I just want to say, the featuring nowadays doesn't make that much sense anymore. But I remember the days when we just had to do everything we could potentially to get featured because we were getting millions of installs over that week. And we started kind of launching the campaigns on Wednesday. Then Thursday, the featuring started. And then on Saturday, there was the biggest peak of traffic. So we were just trying to get as many installs as possible during that first ramp up period. And then since that Saturday, we just had to keep the featuring on for whatever it takes. It's we couldn't just no, we have a bug. Fuck it. Let's not release anything. Let's keep it running. Let's try to figure it somehow, because that was in that week or 2 weeks afterwards, even we made so much money, and it was just
it was crazy.
It was worth it. Yeah, it was crazy.
And I was the CFO as well.
You were everything.
Both sides, and I'm we're 3 hours in. We watch the clock, see the traffic, and we'd be like, "Do we want to turn this off?" No, and we just keep spending.
Yeah, exactly.
And as long as the line was going this way, you're let's keep riding. It was fun.
Yeah.
It's better to spend then if the line is like this, and you're getting, and you have the metrics, and you get your game, so it's going to be profitable eventually. Then taking that same money and spending it 2 months later, where you're not going to get bang for the buck. You might as well just go for it. Again, you go for it.
You create all the synergy and all the everything at that like week, and you just don't pause the first campaigns until they're just as bad as you would like to kill them.
I figure front page featuring still works. I think there's so many features that probably most of them are worthless.
Yes, but then you scroll the store, and it's just like 15 banners. Yeah. There was like 5 of them like a few years ago. And the today's featuring kind of is like good for one day. But yeah, if you can get all of them and you are just like on the front page all the fucking time, then yes, it kind of makes sense. But still, now like also the geo split changed so much. I mean, getting the US and the tier 1 countries back in the day was quite useful. I mean, obviously it's now useful as well, but you only see the big guys over there.
Yeah, we watched that. You're reminding me. We used to use app banning or data.ai and like look at every geo, see what featured. I'm not sure that functionality is still there, and then try to hit the primary countries like crazy. But the ranking, I mean, being top of full, I'm sure is still valuable. So it all affects that. Like if people can find your app in the store, I'm sure people still browse and scan.
Yeah, you mentioned like before we started recording something around being on the top and then just trying to get there. It's 2 different things. Like if you start on the top, it's way better. Okay, I mean, obviously it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, no one knows the algorithms.
Yeah.
But if you start at the bottom, you're in my mind, you're like pegging that stat, and then you're trying to grow that stat. And if I'm thinking Google and how they work for ad tech and everything, it's the same idea. It's same for UA. Like, here's a good example. Felix, you're asking for a hack. Once upon a time when Facebook opened up as an example of this, Facebook opened up their ability to buy UA, which now I'm really dating myself. You would run so many campaigns because at the beginning, like the first period of time for the campaign was it would do whatever it wanted because it was trying to figure out how you performed.
Learning, yeah.
So in some ways, yeah. So as long as you're in that learning algorithm and you start really high, you're like pegging the learning algorithm to think you're better than you are. And so we would like put our best ads forward, spend a lot at the beginning, do all this stuff to game the learning algorithm, and we learned that it actually worked. Like then you're better off than we tested it than like doing a worse ad or normal ad, spending over time, and then the learning algorithm would be like, this guy's not spending a lot, the ads perform on average, why would we prioritize them? The same idea for ranking in my mind. Like start is put your best foot forward because it's easier to start there and then just stay up there as opposed to slowly dwindle. But even slowly dwindling is better than starting at the bottom. No one's aware of you. No one will find you naturally, and then trying to grow it. It's really hard. I think when people like launch silently and then they're in the store, they're fucked up rankings right off the bat.
Yeah, but like not every company has huge budgets, so now it's more about like steady growth, step by step increasing the budget. Of course, if you have a lot of money in your bank account and you have good KPIs from soft launch, you can kind of justify the spend or high spend. Then it's easier. Of course,
I think you can still do it. I mean, the hyper casual guys do it, right? Like they may have money, but they're not talking like AAA title money. And they do it repeatedly, and then they peg it, and then obviously the game over time drops in the rankings because that's the type of game it is. Like it has no retention, but they make it does really well.
That's true.
Yeah, but not really anymore.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the charts, there's still some hyper casual games out there.
Some, yeah.
No, of course.
But they shouldn't be. Like they pop in, they pick their moments, then they die.
Yeah,
But if you can when they start at the top, right, they make all their money within that period of time. It's okay to drop off the charts.
Yeah, they still staying afterwards.
But I think you can do it. You just have to be really strategic. Like, don't do it around like American holidays. like every American holiday is a moneymaker. That's why everybody changes the icons. So like Valentine's Day is coming.
Oh my God.
mostly worldwide, but like everybody's probably already changing their icon to red with a heart and changing their text and putting a live ops feature out. Like, don't compete with that. Find a moment.
Did you actually find this like useful, changing the icons and everything? Oh my god, okay.
Oh yeah.
Jesus. Getting featured to get featured, yes.
No, I don't know if it's true today, but I think about like if my grandma had an iPhone, what would she do? She never uninstalls an app. She just stops using it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you change the icon, they're like, what the hell is this thing? And then they open it again. So it 100% helped us and triggered things. I've seen it work for other companies as well, where you change the icon and you reactivate dormant users.
Is it me, or does it sound like it was a lot easier back then?
You tell me. You guys are doing it day to day. It's easy for me to tell war stories.
I mean, it's not gonna get any easier, but it was, I think, less competition, less advanced, everything. You know, I remember the days when we were just like had hundreds of campaigns in different like narrow segments of users, like 18 to 24, 24 or 25 to 34, all of these like female versus male. You just run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 campaigns tops, and then that's it basically.
I met the flashlight app guy at my first conference in Casual Connects, and he was on a panel, and he was earning anywhere between like 300 to 600K a month in ads. And he was getting questions. And he's like, I don't know, man. I just released a flashlight app before the iPhone. I don't really do anything else. That's his answer on a question on a panel.
I haven't talked to him, a friend of mine. I think he likes me, being a founder Scopely, but he was an engineer at Scopely, and he released a sleep app. Like I think it's still there, Rain, same thing. He's like, shit, I know how to build apps. I'm going to release a sleep app. And then he would run ads all night as people sleep because the ads run.
Oh, I love it.
He didn't know any better. No one's clicking it, but he's getting like whatever, like a penny CPM on every banner that's rolling by. And he like 2 months later, he quit his job.
Of course.
Yeah, what a surprise. Okay, wow. Nice.
You can still do shit like that. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm just sitting here waiting for you to ask, man. When are you getting into your blog post? When are you going to... Come on.
What blog post? We are not talking Monopoly Go.
Oh, we're not allowed to?
I mean, we are, but like, that's not fun anymore.
Okay.
It's not fun anymore. I mean, I do want to ask about like the IPs and like how you integrate the IPs into the games and like what kind of fees and everything you need to pay, just out of curiosity. Maybe it's connected to Monopoly Go, maybe it's not.
We can go around it.
Yeah. We can go around it.
Well, what do you want to ask? How can I start?
Yeah, first, like, how does the whole process just from like signing the IP, like how does that work? How do you kind of connect it to the game?
And I've kept in touch with a bunch of folks, like the different Walking Dead folks, because we all released the game at the same time. I don't think it's changed that much. I think the IP holders have gotten smarter. No offense to them. Like, it just get mobile, just like any of us. And then over time, they started realizing that mobile was probably where all the money was to be made.
Yeah.
As opposed to other channels. I think the biggest thing that I learned, I signed, what did I sign? I signed Wheel of Fortune. That was my first big IP, which is still a big game today at Scopely. And then we signed a bunch of other IP mini games that I killed along the way, which I'm not allowed to talk about. And then Walking Dead, and then a bunch of others.
Can you walk us through the process, or
Yeah, the biggest thing is it's not hard to find the person who owns it, like the person who in the company, like Sony or Hasbro or Mattel. You have to do both, or like Disney, obviously, and those. Finding the person, the goal is to figure out how they're wired. Like near term, I think of it as near term, midterm, long term incentives. So near term, there's always a component that's an upfront. Like, can you make the money today? Because they don't know if the game's going to go anywhere.
Mm.
And sometimes, and maybe I shouldn't be saying this, sometimes they're commissioned on it or bonused on the amount of money they make that year.
Yeah.
You can figure that out. And sometimes you can just ask them. You can get the real better, but that requires money, which a lot of game devs have. The midterm is like, how do you make the money? And this is where all the terms come in, like netting things out, all of that, making sure that you have agreement on content. So there's really three things. It's how do they get paid? Like, it's not purely a rev share. If this is where you want me to go, I'm happy to.
No.
But it's not purely a rev share. It's like, is it net of marketing costs, development? What do you do during soft launch? Like, what else? Is it net or is it just gross? Meaning, like, if it's 30% rev share on $100 that comes in, are they just making $30? Generally, things get netted out. And in fact, early on, I had no idea what I was doing, and I would net everything out. And then eventually, this is where the long term comes in. We would renegotiate the deals because they weren't making any money. And then we'd never sign another IP. And so long term, you're trying to figure out what the game dynamic is going to be, which, to be honest, you have no idea.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even know if the game's going to launch. So you just pitch the hell out of it. Like, my friends that do the best on IP, like, pitch crazy things. At the end of the day, once the game launches, you're probably going to renegotiate it anyway if it's successful, because they're going to ask you for more. You're going to want more. You just don't know shit, and you don't know what your KPIs are until you launch it, and you're negotiating this all so early. The only caveat I'll have is some people try to get a game and then negotiate the IP and layer it on. I can't think of a single game that ever was successful doing that approach. You can think of a lot of game companies that probably just pissed off a lot of people listening, but
no worry, we do it every week.
The point of IP is user acquisition, getting organics, getting featured or ranked or whatever, putting a commercial out and they see Wheel of Fortune, they're going to download it, or and live ops. That's it. Everything else you negotiate, that doesn't really matter. Live ops is because it gives you content. Like Walking Dead is beautiful. Like, you don't have to build anything. You just continue to use the comics or the TV show to play an IP you had and just keep releasing content. I mean, Star Trek, my own game I'm addicted to, they're still releasing content, whatever, like 6 or 7 years in. There's so much content. The hard thing is the approvals. So when the other piece, I'm rambling a bit. I see you guys nodding. Yeah. Make sure you get the hardest part to negotiate once you figure out the money terms is the approvals. Like, can you use
Spain in DS?
I had to get Sajak and Vanna White separately. We didn't know that when we signed Wheel of Fortune. I know the Star Trek guys that weren't Scopely had to negotiate for like Shatner, which is Kirk, and those guys separately. And then you're just losing money. If you don't have Vanna White and you don't have like Captain Kirk, the game's gonna fucking suck. But you gotta get it.
But what is can you say, like, what's the standard, I don't know, like, deal? Like, okay, we need to pay 20%, 30% of revenues, or like how? Just
I don't know the current deal structures.
Okay.
I've been in it. I'm sure it's like for a AAA IP, I'm sure you're talking a large amount of money up front.
Okay.
I'd be able to recoup it as the game progresses. Like, sometimes recouping means, like, if you paid $100,000 up front, which was very little back in the day. So you probably look at $1 million or more millions today. You either pay it up front and you never get it back, or once you release the game and start making money, sometimes you can kind of earn it down, or at least a percentage of it.
Yep.
Another caveat for people listening. And then the rev share depends on what you're netting out. Historically, when I was back then, and I don't think I'm talking out of turn, we had to remember, Scopely has like a developer, Scopely itself, and an IP, so it has to triple split. So you're probably looking, we were generally in the 20 to 30% range went to the IP holder. The other one, Scopely and the game developer didn't split as nicely because there's like, it takes years to build a AAA game. So you're paying them basically to release the game. So the rev share would be all over the place.
Yeah, it's wild. That's wild calculation. Okay.
And then we built in lots of hooks for the developer side. The game does really well. We buy the company, for instance. You have a right of first refusal. It changes the entire negotiation. But
okay.
But I mean,
sounds like fun.
I'd say there's definitely typical. And if you're going to Hasbro, you're going to get the typical. If you're going to other folks that have something people recognize with enough content, you can probably ask them to be honest up front if they trust you and believe that you're actually going to make a real game. And then you can kind of figure it out with them.
So it gets easier to negotiate harder if you've had a couple of successes under your belt, I guess, then.
I think it's easier if you have successes and harder if it's your first. Easier because it may be more costly because if I was an IP holder, I'd get greedy. But they at least know your game's going to go out, that they're going to make some money, that you can do something quality with their IP. Because even if they're incentivized for the near term, they still want a cool game. Like the Hasbro guys love Scopely right now.
Oh, I can imagine.
Of course.
I can imagine.
Not because of the rev necessarily, but it's just it's fun to be part of a cool game that people are thinking about.
Yeah, everybody's talking about Monopoly Go. So
exactly
the whole IP as well attached to it. But then how do you kind of do people take something like this into ROAS calculations or prediction models or something like that?
I think people, when you think about LTV, it's not really, there's predictive ones out there and people look, and there's tons of companies that are trying to do predictive LTVs. I personally think it's all bullshit. I think at the heart, you have certain metrics you need to hit that are leading indicators. And in a soft launch, you care about what's my user acquisition cost per user? What channels my work? Do I have something that's retaining users on a day 1, 7, 30, whatever?
Yeah.
Those all feed the predictive LTVs. So in some ways, PLTV is your business metric, but it's not something you can act on.
Yeah.
And so I think all these metrics that feed into it are the ones people should think of. So to answer your question, does IP feed that? I'm sure people try. I think it's too hard to predict soft launch. I think that's why I think it's partially bullshit too. Build a good game. You can measure the UA metric based on that. That's the only one it'll really affect. The live ops, the ongoing iteration, you're going to do that shit anyway. You're going to find the metrics that suck. You're going to release with some good ones, some bad ones, and then you're going to iterate and try to make them more successful over time. And then IP is just a way to get there, but it's not something that's going to tell you whether you should release or what you're going to work on.
Have you seen games that because of the IP weren't profitable for the developer, but the IP holder was kind of okay-ish with it because they were still getting money, but by the contract you would still need to run it for I don't know, some kind of period of time? Because I heard about those from some of my friends, can't really name them, but just we were forced to run the game on a loss because of the contract.
You're bringing me back. I've definitely heard of that. Not recently, where people like that, probably pretty recently, actually. You're right. I think there are contracts where you're forced to run the game. It's more like dev shop mentality. Again, I'm going to piss maybe your friends off, but if you're building, who's working for who? If the IP holder comes to you and wants to build a game, and then they're saying you're on the hook for 4 years, you're not a game developer anymore. You're a dev shop for that IP holder, and the IP holder doesn't know how to make games. That's not their business. So you could get really screwed. And you're working on this game forever when you'd rather work on something else. Actually, I can think of one. I can't think of names. I don't want to throw them under the bus.
Don't worry. Yeah, that's fine.
Signed a game developer. You can get the list of game devs that Scopely's worked with successfully. One definitely had this issue with not necessarily an IP holder, but with a big game dev shop out of Asia back in the day. And they got stuck and they were losing money on the game they released. And to be honest, it was their fault. They never negotiated a deal where you can't pay for your own developers. If you're going to take that approach, make sure you make the money to pay your own people at least at a minimum.
Okay.
Yeah, that would suck. I feel for anybody going through that.
Yeah.
Break the contract. That would be awful.
Yeah. All right.
Could I take this to ANRs as well? Do we have time? Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. That's what I wanted to ask as well.
Eric, I was actually looking at your website earlier for Embrace, and you have an ANR product. And I just wanted to give you a real-world example that happened to me, what is it now, 5 weeks ago.
Bring it up.
Tell me like what you think would be in the best course of action and what you think would be doing better. So one of my clients is a top 20 global publisher for ads. So basically they're 95% driven on ad revenue, 95% driven on ad revenue. They show millions and millions of ads every day. For some reason, one day ANRs on the largest title just started spiking. It went from below threshold and it went up to almost 4% and slowly, gradually over like 7 days. And then suddenly it just really went up. And to find out the culprit, we had to start turning off networks one by one until we found it. And it turned out the culprit was, in the end, Google that had started rolling out a new ad format on banners.
You should always start with Google. Do you remember manual?
No, you can't, because it's the biggest revenue driver. You go Google last always, because if it's 40% or 50% of your revenues, you really pray that is not the one that is you have to switch off, right?
Okay. Where's the question?
Yeah, the question is like, the question there is, is there a better way?
Yes. I mean, when you go to this is what I'm going to assume they're doing. By the way, Apple probably does this shit as well. They just never give you any information. But they're definitely tracking stuff, and you can kind of see pieces of it coming out in their APIs. But Google has the Google Play Console, which gives you the rankings for those folks here, right? There's like Crash, ANR, and a bunch of others. There's the orange line where they change the color once in a while. So when you listen to this, it may be a different color, but you want to stay on the right side of that line. And so for ANRs, if you're on the wrong side, I haven't heard of anybody really. You can get your hand slapped. You could potentially get your app pulled. I haven't heard that happen, but what they do threaten is the ranking, which for a top 20 company for a big game is a big deal. Like every penny counts, especially free users. The console doesn't help, which I'm sure they went to first. That's why I started there. Gives you a bunch of ANRs. For those who don't know, it's a concept in engineering called app not responsive or application non-responsive. There's people say different terms, but ANR, application non or not responsive. It's when your app freezes to the user. And what Google does is it tracks the main thread. Ad providers are often using the thread when they shouldn't be, or using it incorrectly. But sometimes even when they take over, they have to, like for a video or an interstitial. And then Google will track it generally when a user, after a certain number of seconds, like 5 to 10, and the user gets prompted. And if you have an Android device, you'll see like the prompt, like, would you like to close the app? They take a trace, like think of a crash, like you get a stack trace. The stack trace sucks. It doesn't help you at all. And then you go to other tools like a Firebase, and then you have to try to match it to Firebase. Firebase also doesn't track it very well and doesn't give you the right information. So yeah, you end up with this shitty moment where if you're an ad-based game, you're literally turning on and off things. I would say first, don't feel alone. I know that there won't be all the game developers who do the same friggin' thing, but they all do it. There are better ways to do it. Like I will give a kudos to Scopely. I know Sen has built some stuff where they try to like pull information in real time from the device to figure out if the network or even the ad ID, Iron Source and AppLovin give you pieces of the information. Their goal is to give you as little as possible because they don't want to be the ones turned off. But that's one approach. Obviously, so I'll kudos myself. Embrace.
Yes, you can. Yeah, that's fine.
Like the goal of Embrace is collect everything because no one was collecting it, and then index it by user. So like if you have a frozen startup or bad ad, you can just look it up and see what happened. And so for ANRs, you can just look up the session, and then at the beginning of the ANR, we actually grab a trace. So when you go into Embrace, you'll actually see the ad provider right off the bat. And then you can actually match it because we see the end of the ANR. you can match it to the one in the Google Play Store, so you can affect the ranking. So you actually have the information to make that choice. Can you do so? That'll help you identify Google. It'll help you identify AdMob. We can tell you the ad unit or the campaign ID if you send it to us, and we fish it out for Iron Source and a couple others, but it's imperfect because it's like whack-a-mole. For non-ad games, I'll just say this: they also have these problems. Every game has ANR issues. It's how good you track it and how good your code is. So for like Wildlife, was just a customer, and they're okay with me talking about it. They have ad-based games and RPG games. They both have issues. They both friggin' suck. The ad ones are more acute, and people like to talk about it because everybody likes to shit on the ad vendors like we do. The non-ad ones, they're the same problems. It's really hard problem to make sure that your users' experiences are preserved. So part of what I do in Brace is it's the name of the company. It's really cheesy, but it's like give every engineer a hug, because all they do is yeah, it sounds really stupid, but there's no love. They're just finger pointing. Like, you, Felix, probably went to the company or went to the engineering team and said, like, let's do this, or pull out the SDK. The engineers are like, what the fuck? Because you're going to tell me to turn it off or pull the SDK, and then like 2 weeks later, you're going to tell me to put it back in because the revenue is too important. And then you end up with this really shitty moment where the engineers really don't want to work on ads ever again. But yeah, like 100%. No one collects this data. So the kudos to me is the company I founded solves this problem.
Nice. No, it's good.
Sounds really good, and like completely reminds me of my time when I was, talking with the developer implementing the SDKs on ads that were always the culprit behind the problems, and then he was forced to take them out.
we had this discussion before on the podcast.
Yeah.
And then you're like, but that's too much money.
Yeah.
Let's put it back in. And then you're like, and then it's just this vicious cycle of just random shit. And then, and then, yeah, I have a lot of stories bouncing through my head, but all the ad vendors try to do different things to get you to stop that.
Ooh, maybe we can wrap it up with one of those stories if you want.
And then we'll wrap it up. Yeah.
If you want to share, we love it. We like these stories.
I mean, at the end of the day, as much as you care about the player experience, you still have to make money. So there's this balance, and that's where that's where we were kind of talking about at the beginning. Like, I love building games. I love sitting on an airplane and seeing someone play Yahtzee, but at the same time, I got to build a business. And so I love giving reps, as you can see. For the folks listening, you got to not just choose the experience. You got to look at the KPIs. So for ad vendors, sometimes they pay so much that you kind of have to take the issues. Not ANRs. I think that's too egregious because then you affect Google. But like, if the ad freezes and then person leaves and it doesn't turn into an ANR and then they come right back because they were going to leave anyway, maybe fuck it. So don't let your engineers think that way because they'll never do that. But your ad monetization, your PMs definitely should. Ad vendors back in the day, I'm sure they do it now. They'll pay you to put the SDK in, just for everybody here. Like early on, we would get paid from, I won't name the vendors, but like $1 million early on. Like, because they just do the math on how much it costs them.
It's gone down a little bit, but mediation discussions are still in the millions usually if you're a big enough company. But SDKs
This is really my favorite part of ads. It's all under the category like you never asked.
Yeah, you never asked. Yeah, come on.
They're like, oh shit, I got to put AdMob back in. Little did you think that the Google guy on the other side is like, how the fuck do I get that thing back in there? And they'll probably pay you to, maybe not Google, but the other companies might pay you to put it in.
Yeah.
So just, I'm with you. Just ask.
Yeah, Jakub, you don't know a lot of things happen.
Product side, it's like very straightforward. Like you have good game, you have good KPIs. End of the story. Like in this ad part, like half of the functionality, it's always behind Felix is like, oh, you need to ask your rep. And where it's written for somebody that doesn't
On my
follow
blog.
this shit.
You need to read my blog.
Yeah.
There's a reason I like help serve Max. Like the Mopub guys love me because I was their biggest asshole to them. But then I'd go get drinks, and like every party they would like give me the free iPad, even though I had the same opportunity. So it's the same thing. It's just it sounds like Felix. You do it like you want to be best friends with these guys, but you kind of want them to hate you at the same time.
Yeah, what I usually say, it's like you're not here to make friends. You're here to make money. Right, so you have to be the most annoying customer possible, and you have to be forever grumpy, always grumpy, and that's what you have to do. And those are the ones who win. Those are the ones who win. Yeah,
and they're not running away. They're still taking you out to drinks. They're taking me out. Still taking me out. They're taking someone out to Scopely, who's awesome, but everybody loves him. But he's definitely can be grumpy. Like no question, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Make money.
No, yeah, we still make jokes about you can't, pay bills with retention. You need to pay bills with money, actually, and it's still gaming industry is still a business.
Yes,
we love games, we love playing games, but we need to make money as well. All right, good. I think we can wrap it up with this. Gaming industry is a business. Eric, thanks a lot for coming. It was an amazing discussion.
Yeah, thanks for sharing especially the veteran stories. Very, very enlightening.
All the war stories.
I've got a lot. Yeah.
Oh, okay. we can continue on episode number 2. Later in the future. Again, thank you very much, and see you next time, guys. Please subscribe, join our Slack channel, and then see you next time.
Bye.
Cheers.
Ciao.
Thanks.